So I think probably Christine Wagner's on. I'm sure Peter Nero is on. And they've had 2 meetings prior to us reconvening. And so far, we've only looked at the expenditure side. I did send you something from OpenGov that showed you kind of the total picture. But let's just focus on Board of Ed right now and see what they have to bring back to us. So Christine Wagner wants to take the mic.
Okay. All right. Did you get my email with the line item reductions, and were you able to send that out to your members?
No,
Oh,
I know I got tied up at the end of the day and just didn't get it done.
oh, okay. Well, that's all right. I guess that's gonna make it tough. I can go through the line items, I guess.
Yeah, we're leaving the line items to you unless you think there's something there that is specific that,
Okay.
has a criticality to it.
Okay, so
we're more interested in what the number is relative to
what the number is. So basically a couple of things. We were, just to let you know, since we met last, we were able to adjust our medical number by about 3% more. So that was helpful because the consortium is going to Anthem now, which saved us a little bit more money. So we're going to recognize some savings there. We did cut down some utilities, hoping for a solar savings. And then line item wise, we basically cut out all things that were considered what we thought you guys considered capital purchases. So we cut out all our computers, all our technology, anything useful at the elementary school, like rugs, display boards. We cut out all of our cleaning machines that would that need to be redone, that would be helpful for keeping our new buildings clean, like vacuum cleaners, floor scrubbing machine. And we went all the way down to even small things like a library couch. That was $200. By doing that, we didn't cut any staff or middle school sports or anything at this point, and that brought us down to 3.27. So I guess then, so that's about 225,000 that we'd have to go back to appropriations for later to get those things back in play. I think we've kind of given our argument repeatedly over and over and over again why our budget is what our budget is. Now more than ever, that technology piece is critical to running these schools. But that's where it is. That's what we were able to come up with. And the total on that for our budget then is $14,225,984.
14 million.
Right.
The number again is 14 million. What?
I'm sorry, 14,225,984.
Mm-hmm.
And that represents an increase of how much, Christine?
3.27%. But we're not approving that at this point or anything. We're just looking for direction from you guys because we're cutting all that out it gives us a pit in our stomach. But that's kind of, if you were looking for an appropriations type number, that's what we'd have to go back for appropriations for, would be that extra 225.
So, Dan, may I speak?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, I think the goal, Christine, correct me if I'm wrong, was the guidance we were looking for was no more of an increase than 2.1%. And right now,
okay, I asked for that for clarity, that was the exact number, and that's where we needed to go, and I couldn't get that clarified exactly. I was just told to look at some line items and do the best I could. I asked for that in writing so I could take that to the Board of Ed, but I wasn't able to get a solid number other than just some discussion. So this is where we came back. If you want us to go down to that number, then the next steps will be middle school sports and staff.
Okay, could you be more specific there in terms of staffing in particular? Christine?
So the first thing would be we have a math position that we need to fill. We wouldn't fill that, so that would eliminate a layoff. And then from there, we would be looking at however many teachers we'd need to go to get to that number. So if that's the number you want, then we just take it, you just take it right out of salary, and then we got to go figure out how many teachers that is. And then we would look at middle school sports as well, because we don't want to affect, education last, right? The educational element last. So middle school sports would save us about $57,000 to cut that.
Okay, so the difference between what we proposed that you work from and what you come back with is still 152,563 over. So if you were taking out 57,000 for middle school sports, we're talking roughly 94,000, give or take, for layoffs. So what would be the salary on that math teacher?
Well, I'd be probably about a $46,000 savings.
Christine.
And then I don't know how we would get that back. I guess I thought we were looking for things we could go to appropriations for. I don't know how you go to appropriations for staffing. But go ahead, Dan. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we wouldn't. What we were looking for was, let's try to get to that proposed number, an increase of 2.1%, which I did clarify with you the next day via phone.
I know, but Dan, we looked at that. I looked at all those. I pulled those all out. I don't know where else to pull it, I guess. I'm confused.
Okay.
We pulled it from all those line items.
So if I can continue,
Sure.
I said, given that number, there was a consensus that we didn't want to compromise on staffing. So it was for you to
have no choice.
Take a
There's no-
look at that.
Right. I
come back.
understand, Dan. I understand. And I don't want to cut staffing either. This is where we're at. We don't have anywhere else to go. The budget is the budget. So if you want it there, we can get it there. But that's where it goes.
Can I chime in?
And
ahead,
I didn't mean to cut Dan off either. I know he's a member, so I apologize for that.
Go ahead, Peter.
Well, I've said it a million times. I can go back to budgets 4 years ago when I said that we couldn't go any lower, and now we're at staff. You may save $40,000 to $50,000 per layoff. Because we're not laying off the teachers. It's a seniority law in Connecticut, just as arbitration is, which we talked about in the past. That we have laws in Connecticut that that we live by. So we'll be talking about laying off our least senior teachers and not our higher paid teachers. So what is the number dollars more that we have to go? You want it from the 3.27 to the 2.1. What is that number, Mr. Spring?
It's 152,563.
Okay, on top of the position she's not filling right now, that'd be about another 4 teachers. And I need to know that because I'm going to lay them off. I have no choice if you're telling us that's the number we have to get to, because I have to follow the statutes in Connecticut, which is by May 1st.
Yeah, Christine stated a few minutes ago that if we took out middle school sports program, that's roughly 57,000. So it would put you down to probably 2 layoffs.
Okay. So what you're saying to us, your feeling is let's cut middle school sports, which we'll do, and I would say to be safe, it would be 3 teachers, not 2, 3. 3 on top of the 2 that we have, which would give us 5.
Okay.
Just so we have it on the record. So we're
Yeah.
saying middle school sports, 2 teachers that we're already eliminating, and 3 more, because I want to write them down.
What,
If
this is Ann Aiken. What 2 are you eliminating? I only heard 1, a math teacher.
Well, so
Oh.
we in the initial, to get below the, I'm sorry, to get below the 3.27, we would not be filling a special ed position, which we don't know how well that's going to go, but we're going to try that first because we have an opening there. So our goal, Anne, is to go with attrition first. So we wouldn't fill that position, then we wouldn't fill that math position. And then we would cut 3 additional teachers.
Okay,
Just,
thank
just
you.
to let you know, what we're going to have to do because of seniority and because of certifications, we're probably going to have to give layoff notices to about 10 to 12 teachers because we're going to have to cover ourselves if teachers have cross certifications and decide that they want to bump someone else. So it's just not a matter of giving them out to 3 teachers. It's probably, I would say, could be 8 to 10, 8 to 12 teachers.
Okay, you know, the scope of this is, you know, trying to get to a total budget increase, then taken to the taxpayers to levy the mill rate. And we had a revenue shortfall from last year of $225,232. So that has to be made up, and that in itself represents roughly a 0.42 mil. So if we were able to stay with general government where it is, the proposed increase of 2.1% that we left you with last meeting, that's 0.92 mil. So combining those two, unless we were to take from unassigned, would put us at a mill increase of 1.35. And that's kind of the reality of it. And I think as I was trying to develop and frame in our last meeting, that I think there's a sensitivity to what we all are living through right now, and a 1.35 mil might be hard for people to take. So, you know, I even offered the opportunity to consider taking an amount from unassigned. And yet I want to be tempered in whatever that amount should be. And again, trying to mitigate the overall picture and tax consequence to the residents.
So I guess the question that I've been thinking, you know, or my thought process is that do we not let the taxpayers decide, which includes everyone, which I understand everybody who's on a fixed income and those who have children in school, whether they want to do this to their school district. And again, this is not a slight to the work that you guys do, but we have certainly built a school system and we were ready to take students in. And I told you what the revenue most conservative would be over the next 4 years as we build that. And you're looking at the possibility of losing over $500,000, close to $600,000 in revenue to the town. So again, we understand what you're trying to do town-wise in terms of building the tax base and so forth. But again, I'm looking at this as, would you not want to have the parents and everybody weigh in with the fact that this is going to decimate the school system? And we're not going to, again, I can't speak for Christine and the rest of the board, but how do we negotiate with the 3 districts that we have right now when we're telling them that we're going to be making these kinds of cuts?
Yeah, I think that, you know, I mean, I don't have the privilege to be speaking to those other districts, but I would make the assumption.
Can you say that again? Can you say that again?
Yeah, I don't have the privilege, you know, the opportunity to talk directly to those other districts, but I think if I had to
I
make,
do.
okay, but I'm saying if I had to make the assumption of how their budgets are coming together, I think they also are trying to satisfy all pieces without coming in with a large increase, simply because of the conditions.
Well, and again, I would just tell you this. The fact of the matter is what we can offer in terms of economics for them coming to our district is far better than going to NFA, which, by the way, is not doing distance learning at this time. So, again, what we've done to build this district has made us so appealing. Again, us having the luxury to talk to those districts, we're going to have a problem.
Okay.
Can everyone mute their, please?
Yeah, I'm going to talk to individual Board of Finance members now. Mike Anderson, why don't you weigh in to what we've just heard?
I would just like, so I want to clarify the numbers. Dan, you said we're to make up from the 3.27% down to 2.1, we need $152,000. Is that correct?
Yes, 152,563.
And middle school sports was
57,000.
$57,000. And math position filled would save how much?
They were talking about, if I heard them correctly, 40
I'd like
to
to hear from-
50,000 per layoff. So the
but
difference
is that
between 95,563. So if I put 45 to that, you're talking 2 layoffs.
Just to clarify though, you have to look at certifications and it's just not as clear cut as that. So typically what they're going to do is they're going to have to put more layoffs out than that, reorg, figure out who can teach what based on seniority and everything else, and then possibly bring some back in. But just to be clear, it isn't just, I just don't want it to go out that we did 1 or 2 and then we end up laying off more and it looks like a mixed message there.
So, and again, going back to, this is not the elimination of 2 positions, it's the elimination of 4 positions. Right, again,
All
to
right,
that
so-
we're telling you right now, which we do not want to do, okay, because it's going to significantly impact our math program, and we don't know our special ed, we don't know what's going to happen when we have to start paying supplemental special ed costs because we couldn't deliver all our services because of the COVID-19. So you're talking 4 and you're talking middle school sports. So what I want to have clear, the direction that the Board of Finance is telling us in terms of getting down to that numbers, you know exactly what the cuts are going to be, which are going to be at least 4 teachers in middle school sports.
Okay, Peter, based on the math that Christine gave me, if we're talking 152,563 and the 57,000 is a solid number for middle school, we're talking a difference of 95,563. So what you're saying to the Board of Finance through dialogue with your board, that you can maintain staffing with $95,563 more than what we were proposing.
And taking away sports, correct? Is that the
That would be
question?
taking away sports. Mhm. So what you're telling, if I'm hearing this correctly, that, if we were able to grant $95,563 more, your staffing stays intact.
Yeah, Dan, again, I'm going to say this. I asked for this in writing, as I know the board chair did. I just can't comprehend in my head when we're throwing numbers out, exactly where we're going to be. But what I failed to remind everybody about was the fact that we are going to have to pay unemployment for those teachers who are laid off, probably for a longer period of time than under most conditions.
Okay, Peter, I'm readdressing, if we kept the 95,563 in there would be no layoffs based on what the chair of the board had to say.
I believe that's correct. My next
So
question would be, would you,
Okay, I don't mean to interject, but let's be
Yep, yep.
clear on the numbers that you are giving us. So if that's what it is, that's something that now the Board of Finance will deliberate on.
okay,
And so why don't we go back to Board of Finance members, and please, all others, please mute while we have this conversation. Mike Anderson, we started to talk with you and you were going over the numbers. And so what is your thought at this point?
Caroline, if you could just mute and Ann. So we can have less feedback. Can you guys hear me?
I got you.
Caroline, can you hear me? I can't hear Caroline. you guys hear me still?
Yes.
Mike, we can hear you. Carolyn, we can't hear you at all. At least I can't on my end.
Right. And I don't see how she doesn't even have the mute signal set up on hers, but I do not want to lose middle school sports, and I do not want staffing cuts. So whatever the number that the Board of Ed came down to, the 3.27%, based upon whatever cuts they could make that weren't to staffing and you know, I don't want to lose middle school sports. And I don't think the vast majority of the taxpayers want to see middle school sports go. So I would take the 3.27 cuts to vote.
Okay, thank you. Paul Simon, you'd weigh in?
You guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Yeah, so I think we've asked a number of times to the Board of Ed to come back with the cuts. I think we've, in my opinion, it's been pretty clear coming from 0% increase to the 2.1. I understand these are, you know, going to be very, very difficult decisions. I leave that to the Board of Ed, whether it's going to be, you know, teachers or sports or a combination of the two. But I would not vote for anything. I'm really actually even torn about the 2.1%, but I understand that there's some, you know, I was part of those negotiations. There are raises in place, but 2.1% would be my, again, I probably have to hold my nose and vote, but I would not vote for anything near the 3.2%.
Thank you. Mustafa?
Oh,
Can you hear me, Mustafa?
yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, so I got two things to talk about. First, as you were trying to make it clear, and I think it is clear, 95,563, that should avoid using any cuts to go forward. And before we left our last meeting, I think some of the members of the Board of Finance were clear about not touching the staff. That's the last thing we want to do. So we're not debating here numbers, whether to cut staff or not. And it doesn't make sense, even if we want to do that, it doesn't make sense. If we are looking forward to, we have discussions already with other districts. So you are telling me we are bringing more money to the town, but it wouldn't make any sense for us as the financial guys to say, okay, no, forget about whatever 500,000, but we want you to cut 95. That doesn't make any sense. So another thing that I want to talk about is it would be reasonable and useful to include some Board of Finance members on these discussions. And I'm talking to the Board of Ed here. So that would give us more understanding where we stand. So for example, when instead of Dan keeps saying, well, I don't know what's going on with the other district because I was not there. I think it would make sense because we deal with the finance, we deal with the numbers. When we talk to people in our meetings, we need to let them know that, well, you know what, we were at those meetings and this is how many districts we're probably gonna have in our town. This is how much money we can produce by going that way. So I don't know, do you agree with me, Dan, on this point or not?
Well,
I'm talking about the Board of Finance, the whole Board of Finance.
Yeah, I think that has some credence. I mean, I think as they were developing the School of Choice initiative, I think initially it was kept to a minimum as to who were the spokespeople from North Stonington in order to try to develop the framework of how could this be acceptable. And so up to that point, at least on the school of choice, I wasn't sensing that Board of Finance was, a member from Board of Finance would help that issue. But I think that we think that there's some validity, some efficacy in the school of choice and what it can do for the district. So, and that's why we wanted to have this conversation. What would be the impact on staffing in particular? Would we be compromising? And so this is the debate we're having.
So I would not compromise staffing because of 95,000. We're talking about $14 million. Compared to 95,000, it doesn't make any sense to not voting for that 95,000 to stay there to avoid the staffing layoff.
Okay, so if they were to delete middle school sports, which was kind of in play here as introduced, but left the residual amount for staffing, that would be giving them a 2.85% increase versus the 2.1.
Correct. And because I don't think the 50,000 would reflect anything on the other district project coming to North Stonington. But teachers, it will.
All right, thank you. Dan
Yep.
Smith?
So as I'm going through the budget, I'm also noticing that we have 2 bookkeepers in town. One of them also got over a 10% raise. What's behind that? Christine, can you help me with that?
We do not have 2 bookkeepers. We had one person who resigned. We just hired another one. The difference in the salary is the fact there's no difference in the salary. The difference is the fact of the matter, the new bookkeeper has health benefits. The other bookkeeper did not. So we have one bookkeeper. That's it.
Peter, what Dan Smith is asking is there's a bookkeeper on the town side and there's a bookkeeper on the Board of Ed side, correct, Dan? Is that where you're going?
Correct.
Yep, so the position for the bookkeeper in the town was changed to an accounting generalist. She is no longer a union position, and it was an upgrade, which is why there was a salary change for hers. This is the 2nd year of that. And then, as Peter said, the bookkeeper position with the Board of Ed, they do 2 separate things, 2 separate functions.
Yeah, and there's no raise for our bookkeeper.
But so technically there are 2 bookkeepers though.
No, there's
Yeah,
not.
one's
Their
general
function is
government,
totally
one's Board
different
of
from
Ed.
what we do.
But in the wording in the budget, yes, there are 2 bookkeepers. Our line still says
That's what I'm
bookkeeper for
saying.
the accounting generalist, yes.
Why do we need why does the Board of Ed need one and the general government need one?
Again, for someone who's been doing this as long as I have for 45 years, there is such a tremendous difference from what municipalities do and from what school districts do. We have the largest bulk of the employees, obviously, because we have teachers and everyone else. It is 2 totally different functions. Wherever this is tried, in fact, they tried to merge some services in Wesley a few years ago, and it just doesn't work. It was something that we discussed. It was something that our board discussed. We cannot go without having our own bookkeeper. Just can't be
fine.
done.
All right, IT tech.
What about it?
Well, you have a director, you have a network IT guy making $103,000, and then you have an IT tech for 41. The town also has an IT tech.
Yeah, we looked at this.
I'll address that. Peter, I can address that. If you
Yeah.
look at other districts and what's going on with tech, we are very understaffed for technology. And if you were to see how Greg and his and the man that works for him are burning it on both ends right now, Dan, There is no way that we could share that position on the town side. We do help each other out once in a while when we can. We certainly, you know, work both sides of the street when we can. But right now, I would be, I feel we're short there, but we wouldn't dare come in on that one. But if you look at what IT departments look like in districts, in school districts versus what ours looks like, we're pretty short-staffed.
And Dan, on the town side, our IT person does not only for the town and the highway, but also manages for the Center for Emergency Services with the fire company and the ambulance. So he has an additional hours that come with working with the emergency services.
All I'm saying is, you know, we don't want to, we're getting a catch-22. We don't want to lay off teachers, which, you know, I hear 2, I hear 4, I have to lay off 12 because I don't know what certifications everybody's got, which, so you're saying that we don't have a list in this town of all the teachers with what their current certifications are.
We certainly do. But again, if they have more than.
So Peter, you've talked a lot tonight. Let me talk.
Well, you asked the question. I thought I'd answer it.
No, I'm continuing to talk, please. I don't cut you off. You don't cut me off, please. We should have a union list. If you're saying that we have a union list with all the certifications, you should have a very, very, very good idea of who you should be able to lay off. You shouldn't have to lay off 10 or 12 to say, hey, I got to lay off 10 or 12 because I don't know the certifications. If you already have a list of what certifications are, it should be pretty easy.
I'll answer that. I'm not laying off 10 or 12 teachers.
You said that you had to put out layoff notice.
I have to give them a notice. I'm not laying off 10 or 12. Again, I've been doing this a number of years to know that if I have a situation, if I have a situation which all of a sudden I find, and I may not even know it, that someone comes in and says to me, guess what? Now I have an elementary certification. I'm a middle school, high school math teacher, and I've got a bumping situation and I didn't plan for it. I've got a problem. We used to give out just for issues of pregnancy and so forth and so on and cover ourselves, sometimes 30 teachers for 6 or 7 positions to make sure that we cover ourselves, because we don't always know everyone. We have a good handle on it, but we don't know.
So Dan Spring, this is to you. I think as the Board of Finance, we need to take a step back from this, and we need to direct what cuts, or we're either going to send this thing to referendum, to town meeting or town hearing, or we're going to say we want this. We can't keep on going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. We tell them, hey, cut this much. If they don't cut, we as the Board of Finance need to make that decision. Me personally, I don't think we should be touching the rainy day fund, especially, I said this last week, if we have to go probably hit it again next year, because if we're going to be in the same economic feat next year, we're going to probably have to touch it again. So what's your opinion on that?
So where are you at relative to the proposed we sent back last week, which was the 2.1%?
I don't like it, but we need to make, we as a board need to make the decisions.
So you're telling me that you're weighing in on the side of the 2.1% proposed?
Yeah, I would prefer to have a little bit more cut.
Okay. All right. I definitely hear where you are, Dan. Thank you.
Yep.
Carolyn, if I can go to you, Carolyn Howell. Was she able to hear us, Christine?
So she's able to hear us, but there's no microphone for her coming up, so it must not be connected.
Okay.
So she's trying right now. I can see the dots happening.
Chat function she's trying?
Nope, she's.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
We got you.
Yeah.
Okay, let me shut my phone off, sorry. Sorry, okay. You can still hear me? Okay.
Gotcha.
How do I turn up my volume now? Sorry, I'm not used to doing this at home. I don't know. This is all really kind of hard. I've sent questions to, Mr. Nero and I guess our board chair, but I also sent it to all of, the group of us so that we could all have this information to discuss. Personally, I'm for being a school of choice. I think it's great if we can generate revenues for the town. But I also think that we still have to really think about where we're at right now. When all these budgets were being created, probably around 6 months ago, none of us were thinking about coronavirus or COVID-19. And, I've asked how much money could be anticipated to be saved during the current fiscal year due to the fact that the kids are not being taught in the physical buildings right now. As I understand it, we don't know if they're going to be going back to school before the end of the year. I'm thinking they're probably not. I'm not the one, of course, that makes that decision. And also, there would be questions as to whether or not school will resume again as normal, or as normal as you want to call it, in September. And even if it were to resume in the fall as normal, there's a chance that something, would happen and we would be in the same scenario that we're in now. So I think we really need to know where we're at now, what the plan B is, and if there are savings, what are the potential savings and how can they be reapplied to the needs? I'm not for cutting teachers. I don't think that's necessary. I think that there are ways around that if you really want to look hard and, make some other hard decisions. We talked about different things when we talked about regionalizing and sharing, job sharing and things like that. But I mean, the teachers teach. That's what they do. They're in the classrooms with the students. So to cut them, I think, would be the last thing you would want to do. I asked the question, how many teachers, like who's getting paid right now while they're not in school? And what does that look like? And,
So,
these are the kinds of questions.
Dan, I hate to interrupt, did you not have a discussion with Carolyn about this?
I sent her an email in response. Yeah, I mean, I think we asked that question last time, Carolyn.
No, you know what, Dan? I did not ask that question. I asked a general question about cost savings. The email that I sent this morning was very specific. Excuse me, I'm speaking. I don't appreciate, when I ask a question and I put it in writing, I would like to get something back in writing. And I apologize, Mr. Nero, because last week when I assumed that you didn't respond to my question, it wasn't because you didn't respond, it was because I did not receive your response. So.
Well, I did send my
I never
response
got
to
the email.
Again, one of the things that we talked about was the protocol, which was Dan was supposed to let Christine know what the question was. I did respond that very day. As a matter of fact, and I responded to Dan with my answer. And I followed the protocol. As far as your questions today, Carolyn, I can't honestly answer them because we're still.
I'm not expecting an answer today. I'm just saying that these, I think, are important questions that should be asked and answered and discussed. I think the taxpayers deserve to know.
Let me explain to you why. Because the governor's order on 7R has some ambiguity in it. We don't know what's going to happen regarding transportation, where we know we're going to have some savings on that, but we're not sure because there's the question about the fleet. Special education, for example, we don't know where that's going to land because we're going to have to give compensatory and supplemental services probably during the summertime when this budget is finished. So we don't know where we're going to stand because there's so much ambiguity in that. And that's and again, I sent something to Christine today that came from not only from the superintendents, because every municipality is looking for what is it going to be at the end, but we just can't do it. And I had that discussion with Dan today. I said, I wish I could tell you, but I don't know.
And again, why can't we have these discussions at our board meeting? Why? I mean, I'm putting it in writing, I'm asking for a response in writing, and then when I come to the meetings, I hear, well, I've had this discussion with Dan. Well, I thought the Board of Finance was supposed to have these discussions.
Right, and again, the protocol that we set at that first meeting was, anybody who had a question from the Board of Finance, that question goes to Dan. Dan would send that question to Christine. I just want to follow the protocol, and my answer would be just what I gave right now.
Which is fine. If I am to send Dan Spring a question in writing, and then he forwards it to anyone else in writing, that the response he gets in writing would come back to the Board of Finance so that all of us could see it and discuss it and not have it be secondhand information.
Well, again, you're going to have the discussion with Dan.
I understand that, and I'm sorry that I'm a little tired. I mean, we're working hard right now where I work, trying to keep it all together. And I'm not insinuating that nobody else is working either, but when I ask these questions and they're pretty straightforward, even if you don't have the answer today, it's still the question that I think should be answered, whether it's answered next month or 2 months from now. But it should
Carolyn,
just be set aside and just ignored.
I did not ignore it.
I know you did not ignore it, and that's what I'm trying to make clear, that I'm apologizing. I did not know that you responded because that information was not forwarded or shared with me, or anyone else for that matter. So my question was, and I know people really don't want to hear this question because it makes people uncomfortable, but I only think it's fair to the taxpayers to ask this question. I asked to please clarify which employees are continuing to get paid right now, how many hours these employees are getting paid, and how many hours these employees are actually working, and how that kind of work looks like.
So I can give you clarity on all of that right now, okay? And for the whole board to hear.
Thank you.
And that is the governor's executive order 7R clearly states that we are not to lay off any people during this time. So we have MOAs with each one of our bargaining units, the teachers that are all working, the administrators that are all working. We even have the paras that are working, all working. We have the custodians that have been sanitizing and cleaning the building. I ordered them to go home at the end of the day, Monday, and they're going to be out for the next 3 days because they have Good Friday off. The reason why I did it is because following the news, it is supposed to be the deadliest of weeks this week and next week. I also have agreed with their union that when the custodians come back, which will probably be the beginning part of next week, not only can they work inside the building, but they can work outside the building. So we got all of these things in place. Basically, everybody has been working since the day that we left. Food service is one of the areas that we don't employ the folks in food service. We have a vendor. We have one person who is on site who is making breakfast and lunch for those students who are in need of breakfast and lunch. So if they come today to get, for example, they'll get their breakfast and lunch on the same day. They get their lunch for the day and their breakfast for the next day. We are doing that because as you say, some people are hitting difficult and when the kids are not in school, especially all those students who are on free and reduced lunch. So we virtually have every person working except for the next 3 days, the custodians, and maybe into the beginning part of next week. Everybody's working.
So they're working the normal hours that they would normally put in?
They're working their normal hours. In fact, the custodians who are sanitizing the buildings will probably get a jump on the move that we're going to have to make. I'm not sure where the building committee stands in terms of money for a moving service, but we want to start, hopefully, when the building's turned over to us, which looks like in the next 2 weeks, start moving all the books, desks, chairs, and everything over to the elementary school to get that school ready for the opening whenever that is. But again, just to reiterate, when this happened, a lot of superintendents either, worked half shifts or whatever. it's clear in the governor's order that people should be being paid and their benefits should be being paid at this particular time. That's what the stimulus package is there for. The unknown thing will be transportation, and we're not paying them until we find out what we actually are going to owe them.
Are you satisfied, Carolyn, at this point?
Yeah, at this point I am. So I have another question that I need to bring up, which has nothing to do with the Board of Education. But thank you, Mr. Nero, for explaining.
Caroline, again, I respect you tremendously, and I know you've been a big advocate. I'm just as frustrated as you are. I hate talking into a computer screen when I could be at a meeting talking to you guys. And I told you that going back 4 weeks ago that I still like you guys. It's difficult because we've built an educational system here that we believe is first class, and it's like tearing my heart out when these things happen. But again, Carolyn, I respect you tremendously, and I hope I answered your questions.
Yeah, you have answered my questions. The thing that, I find difficult is that, everybody's struggling right now. And I think everyone needs to remember that this isn't personal. This is just about numbers right now, unfortunately, because there's a lot of big numbers and there's a lot of people that don't have money coming in right now. So for them to even consider the tax increase that we would have to make in order to accommodate these requests for this year, it's just, I don't think it's going to fly. So my other question, I guess I have for my co-members on my board is, I always bring up safety first, but with the EMS and fire ambulance having to go out on calls now because of COVID-19 and having to protect themselves, like they have to don this PPE that's disposable. It's like that's adding extra cost to their budget. Now their budgets had been cut. So, and this is the kind of thing where you're starting to throw around numbers like, well, middle school sports is only this and that. And it's like, and I don't want the kids to lose their sports programs. I think that we should have arts and music and sports. I think those are the things that the kids really love, and it makes them want to go to school, no matter, how inclined they are to go to college. So I really don't like to hear that those things are going to be cut, but I also think that we have to have these discussions. I mean, we really are in a different world right now. We have a lot to consider, across the board. All of the needs of all of our departments in town. I mean, this is not business as usual. We're right in the middle of a pandemic, and this could go on for months. This could come around again next year. We just don't know. So I think it would be very short-sighted just to be looking at, things as they were and things how, people want them to be, because that's really not the reality. I think everybody needs to be a little bit flexible and considering all of our needs. It's not just about wants, it's really about needs and taking care of the taxpayers and all of the taxpayers. The weakest and the youngest of us, you have the elderly you have to consider, and you have the young children, and then everybody else in between. So, I mean, to say that, we can't look at this as a whole picture. I mean, we really should be looking at this, broadly, and we really have to come together and come up with something that's going to work for everybody and meet all the needs of all the people in any way that we can. And that's just my thoughts. So I'll turn it back over.
And Carolyn, where do you weigh in terms of the proposed increase on the Board of Ed budget?
I really haven't moved from where I was last week. I mean, I really, like I said, I'm a middle of the road person, and I just, unfortunately, I just don't think right now, the way things are, and again, I don't think we need to vote on it tonight. I think that we need to see what plays out in the next month or so, because that could change, things drastically. We just don't know. And I think to push it forward is foolish and it's short-sighted. And I realize everybody wants to keep their timelines, but I really think that, you know, so much can change. And we just, you know, we're very lucky in our part of the state that we haven't been impacted as much as they've been impacted closer to New York and the other cities. But it's coming. And if you look at the numbers, I mean, they're jumping up. And like you said, the next couple of weeks will be very telling to see, you know, what happens in this region. And it's concerning.
Okay, so among the things that you've said, Caroline, and I appreciate your input, that you did not want to compromise staffing at the school. Is that what I heard?
I don't think that they need to lay off teachers, nor do I think they should. And I think that they could find it in other ways. I know that, you know, they say that they can't, but I think that there are different ways where savings could be made. And to say that we're saying that they want to lay off teachers is not correct or fair. I think that that's the last thing that any of us wants to do. I mean, I can't speak for everybody, of course. But I think there's other things that could be cut or shrunk down, or, you know, there's ways to make it work depending on our circumstances. And of course, you know, I'm not in a union, so I don't know how all the union rules go, but maybe in these times, you know, maybe the union should consider, you know, a little flexibility.
All right, so I mean, if we were talking staying with the proposed 2.1% increase, or would you move to accommodate staffing, which would bring us to a 2.85% increase?
I just think that, I don't know. I think we should talk about it and we should come up with a solid number, and we should, like Christine said, we should be giving it to them in writing. And I think it's really difficult to have these conversations over computer and not have all of the information in front of us. And I mean, it's not to say that we'll be able to meet together anytime in the very near future anyways, but to have this kind of, you know, fly by the seat of your pants conversations and try to make a commitment. I prefer to see things in writing so that I can look at it and, you know, think about it before responding. So no, I'm not in favor of cutting teachers, but I'm also not in favor of necessarily making increases, at least not tonight, because I think that we have a lot more to consider. I don't think we have all the pieces. That's all I'm saying. I think that there's more, and if we just give it a little time, we'd have more information to be able to make a better decision.
Dan, you have a hand from Mike Anderson, and then also Christine Wagner had raised her hand earlier, so I don't know if she still has feedback. I don't know if you can see the screen, so I'm just letting you know.
Yeah, I'm not seeing the matrix of people, so
Okay.
Go ahead, Mike Anderson.
Yes, Caroline, I really appreciate all your comments. I just wanted to weigh in as someone who has kids in the school system on how hard our teachers are working. I have my older daughter's in 8th grade, so she's in middle school, and my younger's in 5th grade, so she's in the elementary school, and the teachers are putting in yeoman's work to make sure these guys are getting educated still. And it's awesome to see how ramped up they got and how fast they got them learning online. My wife is also a speech pathologist in the Preston school system, and I know how hard she's working. So I think everyone out there really needs to know how amazing these people are doing to keep our kids being educated. I like your comment on kind of pushing this thing out. We have, you know, so we can keep discussing this. I don't think that, you know, with all due respect to Paul and to Dan, that we can cut off our nose to spite our face to get these numbers down so much. I think we need to give this time for maybe for Peter and his staff to understand where we are at the end of the budget year. I mean, the school year, to see how much they're going to be left over with that perhaps can go back either we decide to let them roll that over to save some of these things, or, you know, to know how much they're going to be giving to the undesignated fund to bolster that, which then can come back out as appropriations. And then we can still continue to talk, they can talk, and we can get more clear numbers from them on what exactly are those one-time purchases, to go to Dan Smith's question about what's going to happen next year, that this appropriation is only for these one-year expenditures that we're going to be taking from the undesignated fund, and maybe make the board of selectmen look back at their budget to see what kind of one-time expenditures are there for them to pull out to then go for a special appropriation down the road. So to Carolyn's point, I think we can push this out and find out where we are at the end of the year, and maybe we can keep these numbers lower. And not suffer cutting out our school. I mean, the best part of our school, the staff and programs that are bringing other towns to our district to bolster our income side. So that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Mike. I'd like to hear from Ann Aiken, and then Christine, I'll come back to you. Christine Wagner.
Yeah, can you hear me, Dan?
Yes, loud and clear.
All right. I sent a list of what I thought were possible cuts out for consideration. Did you have a chance to look through that?
No, I did not.
All right. Well, I listened in at the Board of Ed meeting last week, and one of the things they discussed was turning the groundskeeping for the school back over to the town. And I think if you can do that, it would cut out the groundskeeper position they have. It would add minimal overtime to the town's groundskeepers, and we could see some savings there. I also thought it was worth looking at combining the bookkeepers' positions. I thought that there were a couple of admin positions in the school that could be combined. I have questions about why a school needs a business manager. And I was looking at the middle school, high school assistant principal as a position that could also be cut, because you're looking at a student body of 314 students, I think. Yeah, 314 students. And having a principal and an assistant principal, I think, is overkill. And if you look at all of these cuts, you're getting down to the level that you were looking for. And I think that you can look at cuts like this and not have to cut teachers and not have to cut sports programs, and keep your school of choice option intact and still meet the budget.
Okay, so relative to the proposed back to them of last week, you weighed in, and I mean, where is that tonight? We were talking a 2.1% increase.
Does that 2.1% increase include the extra 65,000 you asked them to cut?
It does.
It
Yes.
does. If they can cut down to the 2.1% increase, I can live with that, because that's a 0.73 mil total increase.
Correct.
I'm not happy with it, but I can live with it. I
Okay.
think it has a chance of flying.
Thank you. Relative to line items, as we approve budgets for Board of Ed, they have discretion and authority over their line items. So I don't like to be in a position where Board of Finance members are tearing apart their line items. I think we can look at them in kind of in an arbitrary way, but they are closest to the operation of their entity and know what is most critical in terms of developing functionality and efficiency. So, and I have to trust that what they are telling me is good stewardship. So, who haven't I heard from? We heard from Carolyn. We've heard from everybody at this point. So, Christine Wagner, I know you had your hand up. So, Christine Wagner.
Yeah, I just have one more thing, and then obviously you guys will, work it through and tell us what we need to do. On a higher level, I'm finding this conversation in the last few weeks concerning for a couple of reasons. We start our budget work in December. You guys are more than welcome to come anytime to any meeting and hear how we go through line by line by line. We realize this is a large nut. We realize it's half of the town's budget. We think our teachers are worth keeping, every single one of them. We do not want to ever cut a teacher. However, we have experience on this board that has been there a long time. We have teachers on this board. We have specialists in special education. We feel like we have a pretty good handle on what it takes to run this district. And I think it shows in our success. So by the time we bring a budget forward to you, we have gone through every line item, every question. We have asked, where are we going to be at the year end? What can we do? We have asked and asked and asked so painfully sometimes that our superintendent walks out on us. We have asked. So to come to the board now with our budget, and you guys are saying to us, it doesn't look like you really did the work. It doesn't look like you've really tried. You're not looking at this. I'm starting to take offense to it. Carolyn, I didn't get the last email, or I would have responded to you, but I wasn't on the chain. I want us to work together. I think we've always worked well together. This is the first time in several years that I've been doing this that I'm not feeling supported, that you don't think we're doing the right work here. You don't think we're asking the hard questions. You don't think this is a difficult decision for us on a day-to-day basis. We don't start this in February. We start this early. We start it when school starts back up in September. We are constantly looking at it. We are constantly asking the difficult questions. And this budget we put forward at the 4.9 was our very best shot at it after cut, because our history is that we haven't had things put back in. Technology is a big example. It was cut year after year and it doesn't get put back in. And our concern is if we continue these cuts, they won't come back in, and we're pulling the rug out from under education. And I understand it's difficult, and I know it's difficult for people. I work as well. We all work. We're all feeling the stress. But at the end of the day, we have to do what's right for the education, for the #1 investment in the town. And that's all I'm going to say. I'm sorry, I've said it so many times, but I just really hope that you guys understand we have done the work. We've done it, and we'll continue to do it, because we don't want to raise taxes either. We understand that.
Very good, Christine.
Dan, can I speak for a minute? Can I?
Yes, Peter.
Just for a minute?
Yes, Peter. Go ahead.
I've been here 8 years. Have you ever once heard me talk about laying off teachers? Not once. Not. In fact, my first budget was when we put the math coach and the literacy coach in. And my third budget is when we put the second literacy coach in. And I did a lot of that. One year we got a substantial raise. The next time I did it on a zero budget because we saved on healthcare. I've been here 8 years, and do you know how difficult it is when you're in on an interview for a position like I was, and just about everybody in the town was there. And I knew that the elementary scores were really good. Now they're through the roof. They're exceptional. But I looked at the high school scores and I said, I can't figure out why, with these demographics and this being a rural community, why these scores aren't exceptional. They are now. We have put staff in place and brought in people to run these schools in addition to the people that were here. And we have, again, become schools of distinction. And that's not something that happened before. So people have to realize my passion. I've been in 2 reclamation programs in my previous district where I've turned schools around myself personally as an assistant principal and a principal. I know when you look at items, say, why do we have to have 2 of these? Well, let me tell you, because the high school requirements right now, the reason why we are an exceptional middle school, high school, is because of the work that the 2 administrators do with their teachers there. Because their teachers believe in what the administration is doing. Ronnie has had a program that is probably in the top 4 or 5 schools in the state, as our schools are excellent right now. So I guess what I'm saying to you is I have never talked about laying off teachers. I did actually 4 years ago when I did it for 1 week and then I brought him back because I was so concerned at the time at the Board of Finance what was going on with the state. But I have never talked about this and I never use it as a bargaining chip or anything else. But if you're going to take more time, and I hope you do, then I have to get a reading from what we do because the May 1st deadline is 22 days away. And then I don't know, maybe the state is going to extend that because of the circumstances. And I know that the Connecticut CFO just sent out something recently that said that, you know, where we have, if there is any surplus money this year and how we could use it. So I'm still going through that, but I'm going to have to talk to our attorney to find out what the state is requiring because we don't. I hope you go to July to make it all work out if that's what's going to give you the data that's going to make the right decision. But given all of that, I don't know what I have to do right now.
Hey, Dan.
Yes,
Hey, Dan.
Mustafa, go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
Hey, Christine, this is Mustafa. I don't want you to take this as personal. Been in this board long enough to understand a lot of things. So what Caroline is coming from is not saying that you guys, you're not doing a good job or you're not doing enough, or I don't think she meant it that way. None of us, because we're all in wards of North Stonington. We're all doing this job because we like our town. So each member of us, Board of Ed, Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, any other boards, they're doing the job because they want to help this town. So we do respect every single minute you spend on that board. This is number 1. So you look at the Board of Ed. We are, as you can see, some members of the Board of Finance, they're looking at the school, the education, the kids, the sport, and a lot of things. But for us, but at the same time, we're looking at 225,232 down in our revenues. And we're looking at, how are we going to make it? So this is where the problem is. And that's why we are pushing to get to a reasonable budget that can at least get, the bleeding, not going all forward like crazy. So that's why we're trying to find a way to get to a reasonable budget. We're not saying that you're not doing a good job or when you're not working hard on this budget. That's all what we're saying. We need to get to reasonable budget. And I do understand with my colleagues talking about this problem here with the situation where we are now and coming up with a solution. I don't think it's a good idea. We need, as other members mentioned, some stuff written that we can sit down by ourselves, think about it, look at the numbers, and then we can decide. There is no rush for going forward with this budget without looking at it, seriously. This is number 2. I know that now schools are closed for a while, and I don't know where are we coming back. That being said, probably there are some savings or the fact that the school is closed, there's nobody there. And I haven't heard anything about that kind of savings, or maybe I didn't, I didn't pay attention of what are the savings that we can come up with for the fact that the school is closed, there's nobody there. I don't know, utilities, other expenses that we're not aware of. Thank you, guys. Any answer from that?
And Mustafa, thanks for your input. I mean, I think you echoed what I had to say. I mean, I've worked with Peter Nero and Christine Wagner for a number of years. And certainly myself and other members on the Board of Finance also have been very strong advocates of the new facilities that we now have. And our debt relative to bringing that to realization has increased this year. So that's another factor. As well as you brought out, the deficit on the revenue side. So it's with all of that we try to develop some prudence and a sense of fiduciary responsibility to the totality of the budget, while still hoping to meet what's critical in order to keep us at the level we are at now. So, we don't want it to be an adversarial situation whatsoever. Nor do I want to be in a position where I personally, as chair of the Board of Finance, are telling you what line items to take out. No, you should be judicious in your judgment relative to what the resources are. And I think that's what we're really talking about is what are the resources capable in the budget that we would hope to bring forward for the next fiscal year.
Dan, just letting you know, Dan Smith has his hand up.
Okay, go ahead, Dan. Sorry, I can't see you, so.
That's all right. I'd like to make a motion for the Board of Finance to give written direction to the Board of Education to act on for revisions to their budget.
Dan, are you going to state some kind of a number to that motion?
No,
just-
I just want, I think we need to put it and actually give that, we need to put forward a motion to give them written direction. I don't care what it is, but they at least deserve written direction coming from this board.
You're right. They do need written direction. I want to
They've asked
second it.
for
I
it.
want to, sorry.
I asked for it last week. Peter Nero asked for it last week. Didn't get it.
So no, I agree. I would second that, but do we want to put a value to that? Like, I think we've clearly stated for a couple of weeks now at 2.1%, which still is a very, very healthy increase. So do we want to edit this motion before we vote on it?
Okay, 2.1%.
So you are voting, I hate to interrupt, but you're voting right now on what?
To give you
Peter.
guidance.
Peter, they're in the middle of a motion. Make sure we have a motion, then we have a second, and then discussion.
I make a motion for the Board of Finance to give written direction to the Board of Education to act on for 2.1% increase to form revisions to their budget.
Second.
Okay, we have a second to the motion. We're now open for discussion.
So again, Dan, this is Dan, the chairman, Dan, Paul Simon. So I do think that this board, under your guidance, has given information to the Board of Education on no fewer than 2 previous meetings, perhaps even 3. At first guidance was to come back near 0. They came back with no revisions. Next one, I thought was to come back at 2.1. I was very sure it was. They come back today with 3 point, whatever it is. It's clear to me that they're not going to be able to meet this request on behalf of the Board of Finance without this motion. So I think in the end, we're going to have to set their budget and then perhaps bring it to the taxpayers. But I really think it's time for the hard decisions to be made. And I understand, Christine, and the hard work that's gone into it. I understand that completely, but at some point, we can't get blood from a stone, right? It's every single taxpayer. It's not just, the people without kids or the people with kids or the old or the young. It's just the facts of what we have here today. And 2.1% or some $290,000 is a lot of money. And I think that is a reasonable increase for this type of environment that we're in, knowing that these unemployment numbers will go up. Folks will not be working by the time we go to referendum. I mean, this is a hard reality of this terrible crisis that we're in.
Any further discussion? Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, Dan.
Anybody else want to weigh in on the motion?
Mike Anderson, go
Dan.
ahead.
All right, one at a time. Mustafa?
Do you want me to talk or you want somebody else?
Yeah, whatever your discussion is relative to the motion, go ahead.
Okay, so as far as I remember, last time when we voted on 2.8. Is that right?
There was no vote on.
Well, it was not. I think we agreed on 2.8. It was like you, myself, and I think somebody else, Dan. So
The
I
2.85.
think Caroline.
Yeah.
Yes.
If I can help you out there, the 2.85 was with the thought that there would be no compromise to staffing as presented by the chair of the Board of Ed.
Okay, so we're still discussing that. We're still discussing that with the Board of Ed. So I don't know why we're going to 2.1 while there's still discussion with what we need to do. Again, what we're saying, we should not rush these things. We have discussion. I mean, it's not gonna happen within, I don't know, this 2-3 months. We had budget that happened within, I don't know, 6 months, 7 months, and we had to vote for it 2-3 times. So there is no need for rushing these things. So if we cannot agree on something tonight, the Board of Education, they still have other meetings. They can still look into something else, and they can discuss furthermore what they can do to meet or to agree with the Board of Finance.
Okay, thank you.
That's what I think.
All right, to Mustafa's point, we were talking an additional 95,563 over the 2.1% increase in order to accommodate, as was presented, full staffing. Any other discussion?
Mike Anderson has his hand up.
Okay, Mike, go ahead. Mike?
Yeah, I don't see what's not, what they haven't presented is how it's unclear to Paul and Dan. She came back with 3.27. I mean, the Board of Education, which is highly qualified, more qualified than we are to figure out what their budget needs to be, said they had 3.27% what they could come down to, and taking out things that they hope could come back with special appropriations. And if you want them to get down to the 2.1%, you cut out middle school sports and you eliminate another, whatever it is, $97,000 worth of staffing. You already have your answer. So you're telling them that you want to say it's 2.1%, that the Board of Finance is telling them that has to be %. I mean, they've already told you what they'd have to do. So I don't see why we need to vote on this. Again, I don't think that the taxpayers want to see middle school sports gone, and I don't think they want to see any staffing cuts, and I can't vote on something like that. So unless they can find some money elsewhere, I don't see how that happens, and I don't see why giving them an ultimatum does any good for us. I don't like the 2.1% number because it doesn't give me the school system that I want, or that I think the townspeople deserve.
Okay, we have feedback from Paul Simons, then Dan Smith, then Carolyn.
In that
Um,
order?
Yes, in that order. So Paul, go first.
Thank you.
Paul, go ahead.
So Mike, I hear what you're saying, but I think we as a board gave that guidance again, on a couple different occasions to the Board of Ed last week about the 2.1. So I don't know why it's an ultimatum. It's the instruction that they received that they couldn't come to. Okay, I realize that now. I think it's time for those tough decisions. I think you're wrong in that the townspeople are going to fully support something that's exorbitant in my mind. This to me is a reasonable increase. I think Peter and Christine will find ways to make this work. I have full confidence in that. I don't know that, a small fraction of their overall budget is going to collapse what is a very powerful North Stonington school system. I refuse to believe that. I don't believe that. So I think there will be some work to be done. They're going to have to be very creative. Maybe taking some ideas that Ann had tonight. I thought they were fantastic. Maybe we have to combine roles. I mean, there could be a lot of different things, but it's not going to be easy. I don't guess it is, but I do not believe that you're not going to have, or we're not going to have the school system that we've enjoyed all these years.
I think Dan Smith was next, if that's right, Christine.
Yeah. Last week, and I'm pretty sure the week before, we wanted, well, me personally, I wanted written direction to go to the Board of Ed. Peter Nero wanted written direction to the Board of Ed for the Board of Ed to act on. We, as the Board of Finance, need to provide them written direction to act on. 2.1%, like Paul said, it's a healthy increase. Is it perfect? Probably not. But we as a board have to give them direction. We can't give it to them verbally. We're going to give it to them written. So they understand this is what we want. I've asked for information about grant information. I've sent out multiple emails. I don't get anything back. We need to provide them written instruction.
Was there
I
somebody
hate
else?
to interject here, but I did not get one email regarding grants. And it would be hard for me to even answer that question based on what's going on now. And I didn't ask for written direction. I asked to summarize what he said.
You wanted
last
written,
week.
you said, if you wanted written direction. That's what you said
Put
last
in
week.
writing exactly what you said tonight. I'm not getting direction from the Board of Finance. I get it from my chair.
I sent my questions to my chair and my vice chair. Obviously, it must have gotten forwarded.
I didn't get them.
Yeah, as it came to me, Dan, from you, and I talked to Paul Simon as well, I know he was in the chain, that there was no motion relative to the hard and fast 2.1% increase. There was a consensus that we wanted to know what was the impact on staffing, and that there was a consensus that we did not want to have a compromise to staffing, particularly as it linked to the School of Choice initiative.
Okay. So the two emails I sent you about grant information, those never got
To who?
forwarded on?
I never got any information on grant. I've gotten questions from Carolyn, and I've answered them in writing on the same day. The first one I did to everybody, and I said, please be careful because you're sending out to everybody on the Board of Finance, which could end up, we'd have a issue with open meetings law.
Yep.
I really worry about that stuff. And
Yeah,
I think you guys got that.
It's
And
very,
I'm sorry.
it gets very, very edgy when you talk about open meetings and everything.
Yeah, I've been, again, I hate to hear I just don't want to end up in Hartford, on a hearing on that. And the questions I gave it to Dan verbally today because we did not have enough time. We had really virtual meetings all day long today, so I gave it to him verbally, the Carolyn's questions. And the question, the other time Carolyn asked the question, I gave it back on the same day to everyone. I gave it back to
All right.
Carolyn, so I didn't violate the law.
So,
Okay, if we can bring it back to the discussion relative to the motion.
okay, well,
Carolyn, were you weighing in on the discussion part of the motion?
Yeah, I'm just wondering why, is there a reason why we just can't wait a month and see where we're at with everything? I mean, I think I agree that we need to give direction in writing. And I think that when something's sent to the chair of our board, that it should be forwarded on. And then when information is received back in writing, it should be shared with the entire board. And apparently that's not just happening with my request. So, I mean, we have two different issues going on right now. And like I said before, I don't think we have enough information to actually come up with a number to vote on tonight. I'm not opposed to, asking the Board of Education, can you go back and keep meeting and keep looking? I mean, this is hard for everybody, but we really don't know where we're at or where we're gonna be in a month. And until we get there, we're just guessing. So I don't think it makes a lot of sense. And I don't know, when they were planning to meet again. And like I said, I don't know why there's such urgency in getting this to go forward. I think any reasonable person in any board or, any town would understand the circumstances that we all find ourselves in. And we know we have excellent schools. We know we have excellent teachers. We had them before we had a new facility. That hasn't changed. So to say that somebody, wouldn't want to send their children here because of these questions that are being raised right now, which are reasonable and fair, especially considering the circumstances that we're in, I just think this is where we're at. And I think honesty is the best policy. This is where we're at right now. Obviously, we want to keep our teachers intact. We want to keep our school whole. We want to be a school of choice. But we really, we still have the reality of you have to have the money to pay for that. And you have to have the money, coming in revenues from the taxpayers. And right now there's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of people that are not working right now. They do not have any income and their insurance is not being paid for while they're not working. So they're either going to be paying for it out of their pocket or they're going to be using more social services. That's just where we're at right now. So like I said before, I think if we wait and see how things pan out, I think we'll be in a better place to make a really educated decision rather than just trying to force things, again, to stay on some deadline. I think a May 1st deadline and, I don't want to see any teachers laid off. I don't want anyone to have to worry about getting a pink slip. But there's lots of businesses right now that are giving them out. And it's not because the businesses want to, it's because that's the reality. They just don't have the business coming in. So they can't support, they can't keep those same levels of staffing. We've had to reduce the hours where my office is because we're reducing the number of patients that we see. That's the reality of where we're at right now. I think to push it is just, I don't think it's a good choice. I don't think
I think your point, though, Carolyn, relative to pushing the timeline, is we don't have at least an amendment to the May 1st layoff notice situation.
Well, then maybe if somebody was to have to get a layoff notice just because it's something that you have to do, maybe it's done with the understanding that we're hoping not to have to do that. But the reality is we just don't know. And to force something through and try to make a number bigger than it really has to be or smaller than it has to be just based on, what may or may not transpire over the next month. I don't know. I think that we're better off making good decisions, based on factual, actual numbers rather than just guessing.
Okay.
And that's
Thank you.
my opinion.
And did you have any point of discussion here? And anything?
Well, yes. I think that we do need to provide the Board of Ed with written direction. They've requested it, and I think we need to do it. I don't think giving them the 2.1% is a bad way to go. We have discussed a couple of options that maybe they hadn't thought of that they can look at. It gives them a number to shoot for. If they can't meet it, then we could go back and address it later. But give them direction, give them the 2.1% number. Let's see what they can do with it.
Okay. So let's just bring clarity to the motion. Dan, you made the motion, and how should it be recorded?
Basically, the Board of Finance is going to give the Board of Ed written direction to go to 2.1%.
Okay, so there's not a qualifier on that, not to exceed or any of that sort of thing, just 2.1%.
2.1%.
And they will come back to us potentially with a written response to the 2.1% increase.
Yep.
Okay. I think everybody has spoken. In my own view, just adding a little bit to discussion, in trying to develop the totality of the budget, the 2.1% increase was a piece that made coming to an endpoint in forming the budget plausible without the thought that, okay, are we going to have to go to a referendum and have the potential of a downturn on the referendum? And again, it just pushes the timeline out. Now, we can say, well, we can't push it, but the town still has to depend on tax revenues. And that the tax bills have to go out in order to keep the wheels moving for the town. My own view is in the last meeting, we asked them for that direction at the 2.1 and wanted to know what would be the criticality or the impact on staffing. I think I talked about that a couple of times. I think we've got a clearer picture of that. But that has been in just discussion. It hasn't been in a written format. So I think the motion is been presented not as a hard and fast, but that we would provide direction to the Board of Ed at the 2.1% increase, and they would respond in writing. That may lead to another discussion. Again, however, the clock is ticking, so let me just remind everybody of that. So we've had the discussion. You've heard the reread of the motion, and because I can't see you all, we're probably going to have to poll you in terms of a nay or a yay. Okay. So Paul Simon.
Vote yay to the motion.
Mike Anderson.
I vote nay to the motion.
Mustafa Ratib.
Vote nay to the motion.
That was a nay.
Yes.
Okay. Dan Smith.
Yay.
Okay. Carolyn Howell,
I vote nay because I think that we should be waiting a month, but that's the only reason I do believe that we should be sending forward something in writing each time.
and because we have the full board, and I think Mustafa has been present enough on this discussion, he is a seated board member and his vote will reign here. And that my own vote, in that I proposed the 2.1%, would be a yay, but that puts us at a tie. So what I would propose is still going forward with written direction with, if it's satisfying to all members, with a proposed increase of 2.1% and have a written reply. Would that satisfy everyone?
So
Dan, I
you're
didn't
saying,
hear
Dan,
you.
that
You kind of cut out on me there.
That I would, in writing, put a proposed increase of 2.1 and ask that they have a very detailed response coming back to the 2.1% increase. It's not saying that they are to not exceed the 2.1. So I think in my mind, it kind of is documenting everything that was talked about today in terms of what the overall impact would be. But it would be in writing. So it would suggest to me that we haven't accomplished a whole lot other than putting us back to where we started, even though I think in discussion, at least there's more clarity as given by the chair of the Board of Ed as to what the impacts would be.
Dan, this is Paul. No, I would agree that we haven't accomplished a whole lot. I do believe that we have tried this a couple times. They've been unable to meet the request of the Board of Finance, but I suppose at this point, it's better than nothing. I don't have high expectations that we'll be able to get to where we need to be, but we'll see you next week.
I think, Paul, to that point, I think if I were to at least forward direction that is not direction that's being cast with not to exceed a 2.1%, but a proposed, and getting their written response, at least everyone then should be clear as to what the issues are, and that's how their response should be brought back to us. What are the main issues in terms of, in the context of functionality and efficiency and in meeting outcomes that they have defined for themselves. We then will deliberate and we'll have to make that judgment in order to move this budget forward. I think Board of Ed is probably not seeing all that we're seeing, but we do have a revenue shortfall, and we're going to have to decide how is that going to be addressed, and what is going to be the budget that we approve to move forward to the Board of Selectmen. So the motion did carry, but I think there is enough there to suggest this written request. They'll, I think, reiterate many of the things, issues that they brought out tonight and put it in writing. So all of us will have clarity as to what those issues are. To Carolyn Howell point, maybe in a week's time, we have a little more information. We'll see. So,
Dan, you have hands raised from Carolyn Howell, then Dan Smith, then Mike Anderson.
okay. Carolyn Howell, if you've got something new to add to what we've just talked about, please do so.
Well, I'd just like to know, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Dan Smith had said that he forwarded some questions about some grant possibilities. I was just curious as to what those are, and I am also curious if the school is currently working on, any grant requests to try to get some of the technology that is needed. I mean, I think right now, there's a lot of companies that are feeling pretty benevolent about donating these items like computers to students in school systems. And I think it would be remiss not to reach out. I understand because I reached out to Heather Summers to ask about the ones that they're giving away up in Hartford, but apparently because our schools aren't failing, we don't qualify for those. So
I think what I would do to that point, Carolyn, is I think they are doing that on an ongoing basis, but I can put that in as a request.
Bless you. Whoever it is.
Is that somebody struggling in the background?
We may be being bombed right now. No, seriously, it's a Zoom bomb. We may be facing that right now.
We weren't. Somebody came unmuted. I remuted them. We're fine.
So
All
anyway,
right,
I mean, if
It was Mike Anderson. Are you all set, Carolyn?
well, I just, I think that if there were questions being put forward, that they should still be addressed, even if they haven't been addressed yet. And maybe we could have that information for next week.
I'll put that note in the direction. So
Thank you.
Yeah, but we need to know what the questions are. We haven't received the questions.
So you want a full
send it
list
to-
of all the grants and everything we put through? That's an exorbitant amount of work to ask them to put together right now. We put grants through constantly, all the time. They're writing grants for, I guess this is going back to challenging what we're doing on a daily basis. They are so inundated right now. And then we have to make a list of
Christine,
the grants. I don't understand.
we're trying to have our meeting, and I mean, I know you're trying to be helpful when you interject.
I'm sorry. I apologize.
But that wasn't my point. I'm not looking for a list of grants that are being worked on. I'm just asking specifically. You guys mentioned that you need technology. Right now, lots of people are giving technology away. So why not try to take advantage of that if we can to help offset the expense to the taxpayers? That's my only point. I'm not saying that, you're going to be successful, but if you don't ask, you're definitely not going to be successful. So if we don't ask, we will never get. That's my only point is, I think we should be doing as taxpayers whatever we can to, think outside the box. And I mean, if anybody's listening or watching tonight, if you have any ideas, have any, strings you can pull anywhere, put in a good word. I mean, if we could get 10 computers donated, it's still 10 computers that we don't have to pay for. And so that's all that I'm saying.
I think, Carolyn, that, a lot of that effort is being done, but, it hasn't been brought forward in a way that is visible to you. So we'll see if we can answer that. Was it Mike Anderson who had his hand up next, Christine?
Mike Anderson and then Dan Smith, or either way.
Okay. Well, I
Dan's
said
first.
Mike Anderson,
Dan
so go
has
ahead,
his
Mike.
hand up first. Go ahead, Dan.
Hey, Dan, I submitted that email for the grant information. Basically, I wanted to know what was applied, won and lost, the amount. I sent that to you on the 16th and the 27th to you and Paul Simon. I never got a response either way.
Okay. In fairness, I would say in between those dates, I got a new iPhone and I might have missed it. So I'll refresh it and follow up on that. But I think Carolyn is pushed the point as well. Dan?
Yeah. I understand that, it's probably a daunting task, but for us as the Board of Finance to get up to the level of education that we need to understand what the Board of Ed has got, all the information would be quite helpful.
Okay. Thank you. And Mike Anderson?
Yeah, Dan, I thought at the beginning of Christine's remarks, at the very beginning, that she said that she had sent some stuff out to us in writing already on what she was proposing tonight, the 3.27%. Is that true, Christine? Okay, so
Yes,
I mean,
I did. I
okay.
did.
Obviously, if that's materials out there, then I guess what Dan is proposing is that you then put in writing, what would it, what exactly would it look like, boots on the ground for you to get down to 2.1%, so all those.
Yeah,
things
it'll
that
be
you-
easy to put together. We'll have it for you probably by tomorrow.
Okay, whatever, whatever the stuff we talked about tonight, kind of laid out there in just numbers. I guess that's fair and reasonable to ask for in writing.
Yeah, good. And who was to follow up? Christine Wagner? Christine, was there someone else to follow up, Mike Anderson?
No, that was everybody that had their hand raised. I don't know if beyond that, anyone has come up with anything else.
Christine, you're doing a good job.
Thanks.
All right. So that would move us to public comments.
Okay, so I turned off everyone's video that was not on the committee or on the working for the school. So if I turned your video off and you'd like to have a comment when you come back on, you can turn your video back on. So anyone that has a comment, if you want to unmute yourself. Looks like Brian, you unmuted yourself. Do you have a comment?
Yeah, I got a couple of comments. I've been listening. I know it's a difficult job, like I said before, but I think everybody, I think Carolyn hit a really good note. We're all thinking ahead and saying, oh, we got to do this, do that. But the fact is right now, there's a lot of people laid off. There's not much money out there for people. The United States government's even talking about sending money to everybody, which is tax dollars. I think that's an important part as a taxpayer in this town because we fund all of it. A good part of it, not all of it, a good part of it. As far as the Board of Ed goes, I think they really got to go back and look. They got to be having savings on. There's no sports going on right now, so they're not paying any coaches or anybody that takes care of the sports avenue. There's let's see, I wrote a couple of things down. I'm trying to decipher some of my own writing here. Sorry about that. I don't know if it's possible to reopen a teacher's contracts or if they'd want to, but I know years ago when I was in a union, the company asked us to reopen the contract because they said, well, if you don't want to reopen it and renegotiate some of it, then there's going to be layoffs. And most people would vote, okay, I'll give back a little so I can keep my job and keep the money coming in. That's one avenue. Let's see, I keep hearing we're all in this together, but I don't feel we are. I don't think we really grasp the it's not urgency, but seriousness of this virus has caused. It's people are dipping into their retirement that they worked all these years for just to make ends meet. We can it should be well, I'll tell you what I feel, but you've already voted for a 2.1% for the Board of Ed. I'm saying both budgets should be zero or maybe a decrease in both budgets. That's a selectman's budget and the Board of Ed.
All right, Brian,
It's
thank
gonna
you.
get
Your-
What's
your
that?
2 minutes are up.
Well, can I just make one last statement?
Sure, go ahead.
All right. I'm just disappointed about the 2.1 without public input. I know it's the Board of Finance's decision, but I think it's going to burden the taxpayer of this town a lot more than what you think. That's it.
Yeah, to that point, I mean, I know that you listened in on our meeting of a week ago, and I think some of the things that you mentioned tonight, it kind of framed our discussion relative to what we are existing in currently. things that are brand new to all of us and do have consequences, to include the potential of now the reality that we are in a recessionary period, that this recessionary period could be extensive. We don't know that yet. But so that's the seriousness of it. And we all understood what happened in 2008, 2009. This happens to be different, but it does impact many, many people that perhaps were not impacted in the first round back in 2008 and 9. So thank you, Brian. Any
we-
other public comments?
We have a comment, I think, from Charlie Steinhardt IV.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. A couple of things. I was kind of curious how the Board of Ed chairman could have a response back to the Board of Finance tomorrow, that without going back to their board and having a discussion on where they're going to cut, or is it going to actually be, sorry, guys, you got what you're going to get, and that's it. Moving on to the general government side, and I know we've focused totally on the Board of Ed's budget tonight, and they are the biggest piece of this. But if the Board of Finance goes back through their records years ago, when we put on a financial officer, that was after we had made the first selectman a full-time position. The agreement was then that once the financial person was up to speed, the first selectman position would go back to part-time. That hasn't happened. Right now, with looking at the budget, the 1920 budget, we're looking at almost $180,000 between three people: the first selectman, the secretary, if the person is in place, and the administrative financial officer. Without the secretary, it's still almost $140,000. This first we haven't gained population. We haven't gained miles and roads. We haven't gained anything but more full-time staff working for the town, whether it's at the Board of Ed level or the town level. I mean, and, you know, we're growing government, but we're not growing the tax base. I think we've got a problem that we got to wake up and see. That's basically what I got.
Thank you, Charlie, for your input. Next public comment.
Joe Casada.
Okay, Joe.
Good move. How you guys doing tonight? I've been listening in.
Good.
So I emailed everybody on the board there regarding the situation we're in regarding the per diem staffing. I have not heard any answer back, and I was hoping to get a little direction from you guys tonight. Again, my 2 cents is I don't think we're looking at this budget as an entirety. We're not working together as a team for the benefit of the whole community. Everybody's fighting for their own little piece of the pie and not looking at everything here. For me, priority is public safety right now more than ever. Yes, I like to see a good school system going forward too, but we're not looking at the reality here. So I'm asking, did everybody read my email? And what are your feelings about it? Everybody should have copied, all the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance were copied on that email about the per diem staffing for $100,000 in the budget for fund per diem staffing for the North Stonington Volunteer Fire Company.
I think, Joe, you know, I recall the presentation and the letters brought forward by the volunteer fire department. I think that that was relooked at by Board of Selectmen and Board of
I feel like the
Selectmen.
Board of Selectmen is trying to kibosh it, and it's not going to be good because it's been coming back to you guys for 15 years. And before I even been there, that's coming, it's coming, it's coming. And we're at dire straits here. Just a matter of time that the truck doesn't get out or someone needs help. Your kids, your family, the school, whatever it may be, fingers are going to be stopped pointed. And I'm just making you aware of it. So I just want to know, what is your direction? What do you want to do? How are we going to support this? The chief of the fire department, the president of the fire department have come to you. We've come to you numerous times that we need help. Your volunteers are telling you we need help. I don't know how much more clear I need to get.
All right, Joe, your message is loud and clear and so noted. And, you know, this budget hasn't been finalized at this point. And, but I would tell you that that piece had been looked at by Board of Selectmen. Board of Selectmen brought it forward with their budget. for general government.
I was told to me that the Board of Selectmen did not bring it to the Board of Finance. It was told to me that the Board of Selectmen cut it out of their budget for you guys. That's why I'm asking the question. And Christine, correct me if I'm wrong, was the Board of Selectmen, did they cut that out of their budget to not fund that line item?
Right, that was one of the cuts that was made when they brought the department request forward to the Board of Finance.
So the question now is to you, the Board of Finance, are you going to support it and put it in the budget or not?
What I would do is take note. I mean, we had discussed this once, but my answer at this point, Joe, would be we have not finalized the budget. And we're trying to look at, as we mentioned with, if you were on this meeting, to the chair of the Board of Ed, that we want to maintain functionality, we want to maintain efficiency and support the residents of the town with the resources that we have available to us.
Well, I can tell you right now, the resources during the day, Monday through Friday, is one person, if not zero. So you're rolling the dice. I'm just telling you over and over again, you're rolling the dice.
Okay, Joe, so noted. Thanks.
Carolyn has her hand up, Dan.
Carolyn Howell.
Yes.
Okay, Carolyn.
I'm just going to say for the record that I do support the per diem firefighters. And I know that a lot of people will like to say that I say that because I'm a member of the fire department, and that's not accurate. I support it because I see the need. My family has been a recipient of multiple times during the last several years of the ambulance going to my in-laws multiple times. And then my husband's been taken by ambulance a few times. So, I mean, we know what it's like when you need somebody. And we were so thankful that they came when they did. I can't even imagine having to wait any longer than I had to, because basically my husband was crashing at the time. And I know it's not anybody's business, but I'm just sharing, that's part of my life. So I can't say enough about our first responders. I think that they should be supported. And I know when I ran the numbers, when we talked about it, and I don't have it in front of me, so I apologize, but I think the cost to the taxpayers to fund that was something like $9 per month per household. So I don't think that's a lot to ask. I don't know how everyone else feels. I'm just saying I feel that way. I support it. I think it's needed and it serves everybody in the community. And I think that, along with education, we do have to support our first responders, and, somehow we have to make that work. So, take from it what you will, but I'm putting it on the record that I'm in favor of it. And I realize that the selectmen want to wait, to get their information on their own. I know it's been talked about for years. But the fact is that these guys are on call 24/7, 365 days a year. They're going to car accidents when it's snowing. Right now they're responding to COVID patients, or potential COVID patients. So, that's a scary thing to have to worry about bringing home to your family. So,
Carolyn, thank you for your advocacy. I think we all realize public safety is a top priority for the town, and that heretofore we've done what we've been able to do to bring their preparedness forward. So again, we can make note and have Board of Selectmen readdress. Thank you. Next comment, Christine.
I'm not seeing anyone. So if there's anyone else, unmute yourself. If you're on the phone, it's *6. Okay, still looking like no one.
All right.
It's Christine Wagner one more time. I'm sorry, you've heard enough from me, but I'm just frustrated. So I did overspeak a little bit. I will have to take that back to my Board of Ed. I'll call a special meeting next week. We'll review it again. So I apologize for that. I know it sounded kind of like a knee-jerk reaction. So we will review it again and get you the number that you're looking, give you the line items that you're looking for.
All right, thank you, Christine. Christine Diaz, anything else on your screen, on your matrix?
Nope, not seeing anything. Charlie Steinhardt, fourth, did you have one last thing?
The only thing is that following up on the, what Joe Casada talked about, the per diem day guys. You got to understand that without, at the point the system's at now, everybody leaves town during the day. The only ones left in town are the kids. Well, now everybody's home because they're all on layoff or whatever. You're taking a gamble with kids at school. Anything else that happens, if we don't have people around during the day, to wait for mutual aid to come in takes time. And with that said, those districts have to worry about protecting their people first, same as we have to. We can't build our whole response around, well, if we don't have the people, don't worry about it, we'll call mutual aid. You can't do that. For a comment was made, well, geez, you know, we bought you a building, we bought you this, we bought you that. You're building, the taxpayer is supplying themselves with the tools in the toolbox. The volunteers are providing you the labor. Problem is, the labor market's just about dried up during the day. And without it, the first time there's a missed call or something significant, you know, that could affect everybody's insurance rates in this town. So they really, for the price that they put forward, I don't think it's that tough. I mean, I think they could find that very easily within some cuts within general government. That's all I got.
Thank you again, Charlie. So noted. Back to you, Christine Diaz. Anything else?
Nope, nothing else.
All right. I know we have previous minutes on the on the agenda, but you know, in this venue, it's very difficult to have everyone come in with potential amendments and vote on them unless we did a blanket, you know, for them to be amended as is. But there could be errors there, so I would just assume table our decision on minutes. Any objection to that? Okay.
None.
All right, and then I would move for adjournment.
Dan, I got a question. Next meeting, can we have an executive session added to our schedule?
There could be an executive session. No votes could, you know, be.
Just to kind of cut
included.
down on the back and forth with, you know, just so the Board of Finance can actually focus in on reining in some of these numbers and everything.
Dan, what would the topic be? Because there's only 5 things that you can do an executive session
Yeah.
for.
Thank you, Christine.
Sorry, didn't mean to step on toes.
No, and that's true. I think in that we will have things in written form, you know, it's going to be less discussion. Everybody's going to have it in front of them. So
Okay.
that I think Board of Finance members could have a more comprehensive discussion
Okay.
among the board members. So I did have a motion for adjournment. Do I have a second?
Mike
Second.
Anderson seconds with his hand raised.
Okay.
Is that Paul Simons?
Yeah, I actually spoke, but if Mike wants it, it's all his.
All right. All in favor indicate by, hey, aye.
I.
All right.
Aye.
Thank you so much. And I appreciate it. I think we had a very robust discussion tonight. It's continuing to develop. We'll get to where we need to go, believe me. So thank you all for your participation, your commitment, and I wish you all the best over this Easter weekend, and also the best for Passover, if that should be the case. So thank you, everybody, and you'll hear from me next week.
I love
Thank
this
you,
town.
Dan. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you all.
Have a good holiday, everybody.
Night, John Boy.
Bye, Mary Ellen.
That never gets old.
Ending the
Thank
meeting
you.
now. Bye, guys.
Yes, please.
Bye.
Christine, thank you.